The heart recognizes before reason can translate. That's how it begins. Quiet as breath, a heat beneath the skin that pretends to be nothing more than friendly warmth. He stands a step too close in crowded rooms, says a name in a way that makes it feel softer than language, and the ordinary breaks open like a seed. The mind tries to catalog it. Simple fondness, a passing phase, an echo of loneliness mislabeled as interest. But the body knows. The soul knows. The unspoken pull is older than any promise made to anyone else. It happens in small scenes, domestic and harmless. Laughter around a kitchen table where the clock ticks too loudly. A door frame leaned upon as if the wood might buckle under the weight of what remains unsaid. The rhythm of footsteps down a hallway where light pours like water, and the dust swims and every particle becomes witness. He looks up. That's all. A look is only a look until it isn't. Somewhere between hey and how have you been, there's a slip in gravity. Something in the chest leans forward without permission. Words behave, but silence does not. The pauses start to shimmer, and the air grows crowded with everything that won't be named. That's the trouble with stillness. Stillness magnifies. In that magnification, coffee tastes like confession. The rain at the window talks like prophecy. The careless brush of fingers when passing a glass becomes a telegram from an era where people believed touch carried messages the mouth could never risk. Nothing dramatic, not yet. Only a gathering, a slow stacking of glances that builds to a skyline. Promises to others sit like polished stones on a shelf. They are real. Respect them? The pull does not argue. It simply exists, patient as a tide, ancient as longing. Right and wrong draw their lines, tidy and straight. But desire is a river that braids around obstacles and arrives anyway, gentling its edges, refusing to shout. It doesn't need to. The body hears the whisper. The heart translates. Stay away, come closer. Two imperatives, equally urgent, stretched on a single wire. He talks about ordinary things. Schedules, errands, the laughable absurdities of the day. Yet the way his voice drops on certain words makes the pulse misbehave. Soft vowels like sleeves slipping off a shoulder, consonants catching like a heartbeat at a red light. When he listens, truly listens, time folds in on itself. There's that feeling of being seen without being exposed, warmed without being burned. It shouldn't be rare, but it is. That rarity glows. People call it chemistry as if a neat formula could shelter it. Chemistry is too clean a word for a hunger so reverent. There are nights when the moon invents new shapes just to accommodate the ache. A balcony, a blanket, the distant chorus of a city settling into sleep. The script says goodnight. The pulse says not yet. The body remembers something that hasn't happened. A future pressed against the present like a leaf in a book, imprint on paper, fragrance held under glass. In that place, the wanting is holy. No voices raised. No drama enacted. Only breath honest as rain. Love is not righteous. Love is true. Truth can be unruly. To honor one truth may require grief for another, and grief walks the edges early. Scouting. It shows up in strange ways. A deep inhale before answering a harmless question. A too long study of the floor. A laugh that arrives late because the mind was elsewhere, surrendering to a daydream and then pulling itself back by the sleeve. The conscience keeps the ledger. The heart keeps the hymn. 2 books, same story, different language, he makes tea. Steam blooms. A mug warms the hands and the hands warm the heart, and a memory collects itself. Childhood winters with windows sweating and the world fogged just enough to make the room feel like an island. Safety has that taste. Cinnamon, cardamom, something sweet. The safety here is complicated. A shelter built from contradictions, honesty housed inside careful restraint. The wanting doesn't erase respect. It deepens it. Every boundary that isn't crossed becomes a secret vow. You are precious. The unspoken pull rearranges ordinary light. Daytime turns cinematic. Street crossings feel choreographed. Strangers seem to move in careful patterns to protect a secret they don't know they are guarding. A song comes on in a shop and the lyric is too on the nose to bear. Fate can have a flair for the theatrical when it wants to. The chorus rises and there is the thought, undeniable, dangerous, tender as a throat. This was written for this exact moment. Fate, gravity, call it what you like. The name changes nothing. The arc remains, and then the small collusions. A shared joke that no one else catches. A sentence finished in tandem. A message sent about nothing. Did you see the sky tonight? That is absolutely about everything. It is astonishing how desire can hide in daylight, how it can move through a room full of people like a quiet cat, brushing ankles, never seen, always felt. Astonishing and also merciless, because once felt, it will not unfurl its claws and let go. On a certain evening, wind prowls the streets and the city seems to exhale. He is there again, the room lit low, music murmuring like someone refusing to sleep. A glass is placed on the table, fingertips grazed once, then again, as if accidentally practicing the alphabet of touch. Breath aligns with breath. The conversation slows, not because the mind is empty, but because the heart is full, and fullness makes language less necessary. Eyes lift and meet. Held. There's the click, like a door closing softly, like destiny choosing a quieter dress. What comes next is both nothing and everything. The distance between two lives narrows until even the silence wears a pulse. The first real touch is smaller than any fantasy, a knuckle along a wrist, a courageous inch of skin saying yes without fanfare. And yet the entire universe seems to tip toward that single point. Time dilates, memory kneels. The body is a harp suddenly tuned. Music doesn't begin so much as reveal itself. Wasn't it always playing beneath the noise? Restraint has its own ferocity. Not acting is still action. Choosing not to fall is still falling in slow motion. Each no contains 1,000 yeses pressed like flowers, saved for a time when the world can bear the bloom. The ache is patient, and in its patience becomes prayer. Not for permission. That ship sailed with the second glance, but for clarity, for courage, for a path that doesn't require anyone's ruin. Days acquire a before and an after. Before, errands are errands. After, the fruit aisle is an orchard of unsent letters. Before, traffic is a nuisance. After, a red light becomes a place to imagine a different surname. Even small kindnesses grow teeth in the best way. A jacket draped over shoulders in a cold room. A message to ask whether dinner made it safely through the storm. A hand steadying a step on the last stair. Love shows up disguised as care, until care can safely undress. Guilt isn't a villain here. Guilt is a guardian that refuses to lie. It says, count the cost. It doesn't say, stop feeling. The cost is counted at odd hours. Teeth brushed more slowly, mirror fogging, heart muttering its own arithmetic. No easy answers emerge. Only this: hearts chosen carefully deserve the full truth, not a half-life. And he is the kind of heart that teaches that lesson by simply existing. At times, the pull feels like standing at the lip of a cliff, not to leap but to see more, ocean stretching, sky willing to hold whatever the earth can't. The wind is loud and the ground is certain. The body knows the slope. The soul chooses balance. Knowing that a fall is possible sharpens every breath. The world turns honest. That honesty is its own intimacy. A promise forms, unspoken but firm. When the moment is true, truly true, kind to everyone it touches, the line will be crossed not as escape, but as arrival. Until then, the love lives in small sanctuaries. A look held a heartbeat too long, a goodbye that lingers at the doorway like smoke, a comment saved for later because later is a treasure that deserves careful hands. The love does not shrink in the waiting. It clarifies. It becomes less about possession and more about presence, less about hunger, more about honor. So the days continue. Rooms continue. Laughter continues. Real, not a mask. And within it, a steadier music plays, a vow learned by heart. This connection will be worthy of the tenderness that sparked it. The pull remains, yes, but now it is a compass rather than a storm. There is a way through that doesn't bruise anyone's name. The story will get there when the truth can hold it. Until then, the world keeps turning, and every glance is still a secret that refuses to betray itself. Every silence a bridge that can be crossed when love can arrive without breaking anything it promised to protect. And yet, even now, just his name in the dark is enough to make the stars lean closer. The line between right and real is thinner than anyone admits. It begins with a choice that isn't quite a choice, just a glance that lasts too long, a silence that fills with things unsaid. Logic warns this shouldn't happen. Loyalty folds its arms, demanding restraint. Yet there's something deeper than reason, older than morality. It lives beneath the ribs, an ache that keeps time with every heartbeat. The more the mind says no, the more the heart whispers yes, as if the two languages were never meant to agree. He appears like memory already written, familiar, because the soul recognizes before the eyes do. Every conversation carries a current, faint but impossible to ignore. The world feels sharper around him. Colors hum louder, air grows heavy. Simple moments, coffee cooling between words, hands brushing in passing, become unbearable in their purity. It isn't about wanting, it's about belonging. Some part of existence clicks into place, and for the first time, there's silence inside the noise. That's how real feels, steady, inevitable, terrifying. Boundaries arrive like guards at a gate. Friendship? Promises? The soft guilt of knowing someone might hurt if the truth breathes too loudly. So there's a game of pretending, eyes that don't linger, laughter that hides trembling. The effort exhausts. The fight to stay proper becomes its own kind of intimacy, shared only through restraint. Every moment apart stretches thin with tension. Every small interaction feels stolen, like time borrowed from fate. The battle between right and real doesn't look like war. It looks like walking away when everything inside begs to stay. It looks like remembering the smell of rain on his jacket long after it's gone. It sounds like breathing the same air and pretending not to notice. There's a quiet cruelty in knowing what could be and choosing not to reach for it. But that choice doesn't erase feeling. It intensifies it. The forbidden grows roots in the dark. One evening, the air changes. There's laughter again, too honest, too easy. He stands close, the space between filled with the weight of unspoken things. Eyes meet, everything stops pretending. The silence hums like electricity before a storm. He says nothing, just looks. And in that look, the world splits in two, the life that should continue and the life that waits beyond the line. The heart moves first. It always does. The mind, slow and afraid, follows a step behind. A touch happens, light, questioning, inevitable. It feels like truth wearing skin. The warmth travels upward, dizzying, and suddenly right and real collapse into the same breath. Nothing else exists. The years of caution dissolve like paper in water. Every reason ever built unravels. This isn't rebellion. It's surrender. To honesty, to hunger, to something sacred disguised as human. The moment ends, but the world doesn't return to what it was. It can't. Once reality shows its face, the mask of righteousness falls apart. Afterward comes the reckoning. Guilt walks beside joy, twin shadows under the same moon. There's no pride in the love, only awe and confusion. It's beautiful, and it hurts. Every word spoken afterward carries layers. Truth, fear, tenderness, regret. Right still exists, noble and distant, but real has a pulse. Real breathes. Real can't be buried beneath rules made by people who've never felt this kind of pull. Days turn into lessons. It becomes clear that love isn't the villain, only the timing. The world might call it wrong, but wrong has never felt this pure. There's no desire to destroy, only to be. To exist in honesty, even if the cost is misunderstanding. The hardest part isn't secrecy, it's the knowledge that something this real can't live in shadows forever. Every hidden moment aches for daylight. Sometimes in rare quiet hours, the fight subsides. The heart stops arguing. In those silences, everything feels suspended, like standing in the space between breath and confession. The line between right and real fades. There's only tenderness, the kind that asks for nothing but truth. That's where peace hides, not in denial, but in the courage to see what's real and still choose gentleness. Love doesn't wait for approval. It arrives unannounced, demanding nothing yet changing everything. It breaks the spine of the rules meant to protect hearts from themselves. It doesn't care for reputation or timing. It only knows recognition. Some souls find each other once, and even if they part, that recognition never fades. Right can rebuild. Real never dies. And in the end, it isn't about who was right. It's about what was real. The pulse beneath the silence, the glance that rewrote everything, the quiet truth that love never asks permission to exist. That night arrived quietly, like it had been waiting in the corners of every moment before it. Nothing about the world looked different, and yet everything was trembling beneath the surface. The air itself carried a pulse, a hum that made every breath feel borrowed. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even supposed to happen, but life rarely asks for permission when it's about to change everything. He was there, standing in that half-light that makes people look both near and unreachable. There had been other nights, other conversations, the kind that walked the line between friendship and something dangerously tender. But this one was different. The silence between words felt heavy, filled with everything both hearts had been hiding. Every second stretched, as if time itself was afraid to interrupt what it could already sense forming. The conversation wandered through small things, meaningless stories, old jokes, half-remembered dreams. Yet, every word carried a weight it didn't have before. Every pause lingered longer than it should have. The laughter wasn't light anymore. It trembled, trying to disguise the truth. The room seemed smaller, the world quieter. Even the distance between two breaths felt electric, like a question waiting for an answer neither dared to speak. There's a point where pretending becomes impossible. The eyes betray what the lips refuse to admit. A look, that's all it took. A look that lasted one heartbeat too long. It said everything words could ruin. It was that quiet, breathless second when the world held still and made space for something real. It wasn't about attraction anymore. It was about recognition, two souls remembering something they hadn't yet lived. The first touch wasn't bold. It was hesitant, uncertain, trembling between right and surrender. Fingers brushed as if testing the temperature of a secret. The skin burned, not with heat but with meaning. Everything inside screamed to stop, and yet nothing moved away. The body leaned forward, the heart followed, and the mind finally went silent. When the distance closed, it wasn't a collision. It was a release. Every denied emotion, every buried confession, every stolen glance that never found its voice. They all spilled out in one slow, fragile meeting of lips and breath. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't even smooth. It was desperate, unsure, real. It felt like falling into gravity, the kind that doesn't break but finally pulls everything home. The night grew softer, slower. The world outside faded until there was nothing left but touch and heartbeat. Each movement spoke a language older than speech. The warmth of skin against skin wasn't just desire. It was recognition. It was relief. The body knew what the heart had been whispering all along. This was where it belonged. The lines that once seemed so solid, friendship, loyalty, caution, dissolved like salt in water. There's something about surrender that feels both terrifying and holy. It wasn't about losing control. It was about finally being honest. Every boundary had been drawn by fear. Fear of judgment, fear of change, fear of what love could demand. But in that night, fear had no voice. What remained was truth, raw and trembling, beautiful in its imperfection. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy with understanding. No words were needed. They would only shrink what had just happened. The body remembers in ways language never could. The warmth, the closeness, the rhythm that found its echo in another heart. There was no rush to name it, no attempt to justify it. Love doesn't always arrive with explanations. Sometimes it just breathes, quietly, insistently, in the dark. The hours stretched like eternity disguised as seconds. Every touch carried a story that didn't need telling. The scent of his skin lingered like memory already written. Outside, the night carried on, but inside, time refused to move. The world could wait. This moment could not. It was the kind of night that would never really end, even after morning came. And yet morning did come. Light spilled across the room, soft and almost shy, as if it too knew what had changed. The stillness was different now, not uncertain, but complete. There was no regret, only the quiet ache of knowing something sacred had been shared, something that would forever live between heartbeats. After that night, everything ordinary felt altered. The way sunlight touched the skin, the way laughter sounded, the way silence filled a room. All of it carried the echo of what had been found. Denial had lost its power. Pretending no longer made sense. The heart had spoken, and once truth finds a voice, it doesn't forget how to speak. Days turned into cautious steps, unsure of what the world would think, but certain of what had happened. The pull between them no longer hid in shadows. It lived in glances, in the smallest gestures, in the rhythm of breaths shared across distance. Love had moved from fantasy to flesh, from longing to reality. And reality, once touched by that kind of truth, refuses to return to before. There are nights that fade, and then there are nights that mark. This one carved itself into memory, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. It wasn't about lust or rebellion. It was about finding courage in vulnerability, finding home in another heartbeat. It was the night when the body remembered what the heart had been trying to forget, that love, once awakened, does not sleep again. Some stories don't end with grand declarations or promises. Some end with silence, not empty, but full. Full of what was felt, what was risked, what was finally allowed to exist. That night will always live quietly, tucked between breaths, a reminder that the truest moments are often the ones that can't be explained. And even now, when the world feels distant and time has softened the edges, one memory still returns, eyes locking under the fragile mercy of night. The universe pausing to watch, and the impossible becoming real for just long enough to change everything. The price announces itself softly at first, like a bruise that hasn't turned the skin yet. Sweetness arrives with his voice, and the echo of it lingers after the room empties. Guilt waits by the doorframe, patient, unblinking, a shadow that follows even into light. Love like this learns to move quietly, eyes down, pulse steady, a smile that hides what the heart cannot. The world remains unchanged in its routines, mornings poured into cups, days folded into work, nights filed under sleep that never fully comes. But inside the ribs, another clock keeps time, one that ticks for two. The body becomes fluent in carefulness, steps measured, words chosen, a laugh softened before it escapes, because happiness lines the face in a way that tells on itself. A phone lights up across the room, and restraint practices not looking. Restraint learns to be a saint. Messages come like rain in late summer. Rare, necessary, dangerous only when the sky remembers itself and breaks open. Each one is an island where the world cannot reach, a small country with no borders except the promise that it will end before dawn. There are hours stolen from calendars that never list them. A window with the curtain drawn just enough to make night softer. The hush that settles when two people stop pretending that distance is survival. Touch carries its own grammar here. A hand finds a hand, and relief floods like warm water after cold. The sweetness is real. It is not a trick. In that sweetness, the heart steadies. The lungs remember how to breathe without bracing. The guilt does not disappear. It steps back, perhaps, to the corner, letting tenderness take center for exactly one song. Then it returns. It always returns. Home looks different afterward, even if no furniture moves. Familiar rooms tilt by a few degrees, and nothing sits exactly where it used to, not even the soul. The mirror reflects a face the world would call the same. Only the eyes confess. They carry a private weather, a storm gloss that won't wash off. Friends talk. Life continues. The ordinary makes an honest attempt to have its way. But ordinary and truth have agreed to a truce, not a marriage. Love in shadows needs rituals. The mind learns them by heart. Count backward from 10 before answering. Ask unnecessary questions to fill the dangerous quiet. Speak of errands and pretend the word errand means mercy. The heart offers its own rituals. A thumb pressed to a wrist until the pulse comes down. A secret kept in the mouth like a smooth stone. A prayer whispered without a name. These small acts feel like faith. Not faith that everything will be easy. Faith that tenderness, handled carefully, will not betray anyone's future. No map exists for this terrain. Each step risks the cliff. Each choice asks a tax. There is honesty inside the secrecy, even when that sounds like a contradiction. The honesty says, what lives here is not cruel. It doesn't wish harm. It refuses to take more than the world can bear. So there are boundaries, even in the dark. Even desire learns to be gentle. The body, blessed with its wildness, becomes a guardian instead of a thief. Yes, there is heat, but there is also reverence. There is the soft, stubborn vow, do not turn beauty into ruin. Sometimes the ache travels ahead, scouting the future, bringing back weather reports from a horizon no one can quite see. It says storms are coming. It says pack light. It says, this will not stay secret forever, because truth has a way of growing tall and opening windows. The ache is not an enemy. It is a messenger. It wants the heart prepared for the day when the world asks its questions. When someone trusted notices the way a name rearranges the light on a face. There are glimpses of peace that don't belong to any calendar. A walk along a street where the city forgets to be loud. Leaves turning without permission, each one a small letter to the future. His shoulder near enough to warm air. The quiet triumph of not needing to speak. Peace slides in, not because the situation is clean, but because the connection is true. The world prefers neatness. The soul prefers truth. Truth, even when complicated, grants a steadiness that rules never manage to deliver. In the private hours, a kind of home is built from borrowed materials. A story is told with eyes and breath, and the small way a hand stays a second longer on a sleeve than it needs to. There is no title for this place. That's the point. Names invite other people in. This lives between, not beyond. It is enough most nights to rest in the certainty that two hearts have found the quiet where they are known. Not admired. Not displayed. Known. The sting of guilt doesn't ask for permission either. It arrives after laughter, after relief, after the body remembers that safety is possible. It places a cool hand on the back of the neck and says, steady. It holds a mirror up and insists on the count. Who might hurt? Who must be spared? What must be honored? The count is never easy. It is never done. The ache only becomes bearable because love consents to boundaries that keep tenderness from becoming theft. That consent is its own kind of vow, invisible and harder than anyone will ever understand. There are nights when a message goes unsent, when silence must shoulder what longing cannot. Sleep visits in pieces, like a broken song still trying to sound beautiful. In the morning, the world expects performances, and the face delivers them. Inside, a steadier music plays, a low, faithful hum that asks for patience. Patience has teeth. It knows how to hold on without biting. Days teach that lesson over and over until it becomes bone deep. Memory grows a garden in the chest. Not with scenes that shout, but with details that stay polite. A laugh that bends on the last note. The way fingers warm a cup before offering it. The crease that appears beside an eye when sincerity steps forward, unarmed. These are the flowers no one else will see. They are watered quietly, with the gratitude of someone allowed to witness a soul without its armor. Gratitude is what saves this from bitterness. Gratitude and the thin sliver of hope that truth will find its hour. A morning when no one has to measure sentences before letting them go. Until then, care is the law. Care in what is said. Care in what is withheld. Care in how joy is carried, so it doesn't spill on those who have not asked to hold it. Love becomes lighter without becoming less. It learns to fit inside the smallest spaces. A shared hallway, the car parked an extra minute under a kind street lamp, a book handed over with an underlined sentence that says, what lips cannot. Largeness can live small without dying. This is one of love's most merciful tricks. What cannot be claimed can still be cherished. Cherishing is a discipline disguised as desire. It places a circle around what is fragile and says, nothing harmful crosses this line. Not even loneliness. Loneliness tries. It comes at dusk with heavy feet, asking for company. The heart hears it and sets another place at the table, but does not let it lead the conversation. Love leads, carefully, honestly. Hands steady even when the voice shakes. If someone asked what the connection is, friendship, mistake, miracle, the answer would not fit into language. That is the ache in the piece. The ache of not being able to offer this love to the world with open palms. The peace of knowing the world does not need to hold it to make it real. The reality exists in the way a breath changes when a certain door opens. It exists in restraint that doesn't feel like deprivation but like devotion. It exists in the moment after goodbye, when the air is still warm and the soul, having touched what it recognizes, remembers how to be kind to everything else. This is the price and the gift. To love wholly in a way that cannot be owned publicly, and to find inside the ache a sanctuary that answers to no judge but truth. Some connections are built to be lived, not displayed, to be guarded, not proven, to be honored, not explained. The world can keep its applause. Two hearts have the only witness that matters. Some loves are not possessed. They are protected. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a love you couldn't keep but never forgot, don't leave without showing love back. Hit that like button, share this moment with someone who believes in real, imperfect love, and subscribe to True Love Story with deep love for more stories that speak straight to the soul. Until next time, remember, some loves don't need the world's approval, only two hearts brave enough to feel it.